Okay, so welcome to our Gita again level 2. We will get started with our chapter. We are discussing chapter 5. But before that, we will go through the prana mantra, invoking auspiciousness. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajadam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Dalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vigna Vinashana Narasimhaiti Namini Mukam Karoti Vacharam Pangam Langayatim Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Mishwaram Om Tat Sat. So Hare Krishna everyone. So we are continuing with our Gita Mahatmya. This is from the Padma Purana. Today's Gita Mahatmya will be in glorification of the Bhagavad Gita Chapter 5. So Sri Vishnu says to Lakshmi Devi, now I will describe to you the unlimited glories of the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Listen very carefully. So this conversation is being conveyed by Lord Shiva to Parvati. So she's saying, once in the state of Madra, there is a town of the name Puru Kutsapur. So this Madra is a province. Now this province is no longer there. But then this entire section of area was once known as the section of Madra. It's like a state, the state of Madra. So that included, you can see parts of Pakistan as well. So, and this is also extends at one point of time even up to Syria, this Madra Empire. And it's described in the Mahabharata kingdom also. If you see the Mahabharata, in the Mahabharata also, they talk about the Madra kingdom. So it is still existing. So all these places are fact. And today, this area of Madra is roughly known as Haryana. So Haryana is the modern state in India, and parts of Madra now is what we call now Haryana. So anyway, so in this ancient place of Madra, the district of Madra, there was a town. In the town is called Puru Kutsapur. And in Puru Kutsapur, there was a Brahmana, a young Brahmana boy, and his name was Pingala. Now, though he was born from a Brahmana family, uh, and he was trained from childhood in various Brahminical activities like Vedic sacrifices, chanting of the hymns, and Vedic and Brahminical learning. But still, unfortunately, Pingala, he had not much interest in his studies. So he wasn't very Brahminically inclined. So though he was born as a Brahmana, right? So he wasn't Brahminically inclined. So what happened when he reached his youth? He gave up his Brahminical pursuits once and for all. So, and he started to instead learn how to play instruments as well as singing and dancing. So that was his passion. So he gave up his Brahminical duty and took up this entertainment duty. So this was in those days, it's not considered Brahminical, it's more towards the Shudra arts. The Shudras are the lowest of the four castes, and this is basically an activity performed by them. So, but anyway, because he was born in a Brahminical family and he was rather intelligent and he was popular, so, but he became very good in these arts. So he became very good in performing musical instruments. He became so famous in his field that even the king himself heard of him. And then the king himself invited him to come and live in the palace so that he can entertain the king. So he became, in that way, a royal musician. So this Pingala, he moved into the kingdom, and then he started to perform beautifully for the king. And in this way, he also, because he was because he was a Brahmin from birth, the king came to know about this, and the king somehow became friends with this Pingala, and little by little he became trusted him more and more. Now this Pingala, unfortunately, because he was in the association of the king, now this king had many, in a kingdom court, in a king's court, there will be lots of all kinds of things happening, right? There will be court intrigues, there will be so much of backstabbing, there will be, so many politics going on. So day by day, month by month, in the association of all these different types of people, because he was never strong in his Brahminical nature, what happened was he eventually became corrupted, this Pingala. So he became corrupted and he degraded more and more into sinful life. And he started to enjoy, he became eventually so sinful that he started to enjoy with other men's wives. Because he was popular, royal musician, name, fame, glory. He had the king's ear, and in this way he was corrupted by all his bad association. All the fame and all the name got to his head, and he engaged in all kinds of sinful activities, including intoxication. And he became so proud of his position as he gained more and more intimacy with the king. So the king liked to have private conversations with this Pingala Brahmana, and in this way, the Pingala had a lot of influence over the king, and he became very puffed up about that. And he especially enjoyed criticizing others to the king in private. So he became one of the leaders of the court intrigue. Now this Pingala had a wife, and this wife got married in the court only. And when you become famous and you become infamous, actually, with all kinds of bad behavior, what are the type of people we will start attracting? So we will start attracting the wrong type of people. So in the same way, he attracted the wrong type of wife. So, and this wife's name was called Aruna. And she was a very scheming lady trying to climb the social position within the court. And she saw advantage in marrying to this Pingala. So initially she was born of a low character family, but somehow because she was rather beautiful, so she was able to mix along with the court and she became very powerful also. But after she got married to Pingala, right? So they both had a mutual understanding in terms of court intrigue. They were of similar character. But this Aruna, this wife, she was also very, very lusty. And she wasn't satisfied with Pingala alone. And she also enjoyed various relationships with other men, but she did it secretly. And she didn't want Pingala to find out. Although Pingala himself wasn't a very, faithful partner, but he expected his wife to be, but she wasn't a faithful partner either. But anyway, one day, unfortunately, in such dalliances, her husband found out. Pingala found out about her partners, various partners. And then what happened? What happened was the other side of this Aruna was shown. She became very angry and very upset. And she decided to kill her husband. So late one night, she planned for a coup. She arranged for, she knew Pingala would be in the garden, and she got some assassins to come and ambush her husband and catch him. And she herself went and chopped off his head. So she was a very bloodthirsty lady. She went and chopped off the head of her husband and buried his body and the head in the garden so that nobody could see what happened to her husband. So this is what she did. But anyway, so after the death of Pingala, now when the husband died, the husband, Pingala, he fell into the deepest regions of hell due to because he did not live a very pious life. Number one, he gave up his Brahminical activities and took up a lower activity. So that is not recommended in scripture. And on top of that, he performed so many sinful activities. He enjoyed criticizing others. He created political intrigues with the king. He enjoyed with other men's wives. He performed the 4 types of sinful activities of intoxication, illicit sexual activity, gambling, meat eating. And in this way, when he died, he had to account for all those sins. So after suffering in the various regions of hell, being tormented by all the hellish conditions, and in this way, finally he took birth as a vulture back on earth. So he took birth as a vulture, and he existed there near the same area where he was originally coming from. Meanwhile, back to Aruna, right? After Aruna had dispatched with her husband, she also eventually became old. She grew old. So after many, many years, after enjoying with many, many men, so unfortunately, she contracted a venereal disease, a sexually transmitted disease. And her youthful body soon very quickly became old and ugly and unattractive. And eventually she met her death also, diseased condition. And when she died, she was also sent to hell to suffer and atone for her various sinful activities. And she suffered there for a long time. And after that, she attained the body of a female parrot, also in the same region where she was initially a human being previously. So this parrot who was previously Aruna, she was one day searching for food here and there. And while she was searching for food, this parrot did not realize that there was a fearsome vulture nearby. Now, who this vulture is? We know that this vulture, by the quirk of fate, this vulture happened to be Pingala, her previous husband. And the moment this vulture saw this parrot, he immediately remembered his past life, and an overpowering urge to kill this parrot overtook this vulture. And then this vulture swooped down silently and attacked this parrot. And remembering, the vulture could remember the feeling of anger that he had in his previous life, because his wife killed him in his previous life, and he could remember that feeling of pain and anger towards his wife. So that same impression of vasana was kept intact in this vulture body. And the moment he saw this parrot, who happened to be the same wife who had previously killed him, that anger again came into this vulture, and this vulture swooped and attacked this parrot. So the parrot was severely wounded, and the parrot ran away squawking in fear, but he was mortally wounded. And as she was fluttering about, the vulture's attack was too damaging to it. So what happened? It fell down into, as it fell, it happened to fall on a river, a small stream, a very small stream. And in that small stream, there happened to be a human skull floating in that stream. And this parrot fell right into the eye sockets of this skull. And the skull was in the water. The parrot fell in the eye sockets of this skull, and the skull was also flooded with water. And the parrot, already wounded and flooding with water, the parrot eventually drowned and died. And at the same time, there was a hunter who happened to come by, and the hunter happened to see this vulture. So the vultures are usually not allowed because they are interfering with the hunting, right? So therefore, the hunter shot an arrow and killed this vulture. So when he shot the arrow and killed this vulture, the vulture also died. Now, this hunter happened to be one of the political opponents of this Pingala in his previous birth. Remember, Pingala used to complain to the king, and then he used to criticize various people, and in this way, he used to destroy lives of various ministers within the kingdom. So it so happened that after one of those enemies died, he took birth as a hunter, and he shot this arrow on this vulture. And this vulture also fell, and it happened that this vulture also fell in the same stream where there was this human skull. And it also landed in the eye socket. The head of the vulture happened to touch the eye socket of this skull. And together with the water, it also drowned and it died. Now, after dying, the vulture and the parrot, both of them were brought by the messengers of Yamaraj, the Yamadutas, into the kingdom of Yamaraj. They were brought to Yamaraj's kingdom, Yamaloka. So this vulture who was previously Pingala, and this parrot who was previously Aruna, the wife of this Pingala. So both of them, they could remember their past lives, and they became very, very afraid of their sinful activities. And when they came in front of Yamaraj, Yamaraj told them, and to their surprise, what Yamaraj told them shocked them, because Yamaraj said, "Oh, both of you, you are now free of all sins. And you not only you are free from all sins, you are liberated. You can now go to Vaikuntha Loka." Now, when Pingala and Aruna heard this from Yamaraj, they became extremely amazed. They were expecting the worst. But how could this be? So they asked Yamaraj, we understand, we have now understood the sinful activities that we have performed. So how is it that we are now free of all sins? The amount of sins we have created, it would take many lifetimes to remove, or all kinds of sufferings in hell to remove. How is it that we are now free? And not only that, how did we gain that ability to go to Vaikuntha? That is only for, elevated souls. So then Yamaraj, after hearing this, he smiled at them, and then he told them, okay, you do not know, but let me tell you. So, what happened was, previously there was a great sage, not a hermit, a hermit and a sage, right? And he used to live on the banks of the river Ganga. So, and he was a great devotee of Sri Vishnu. So this was the sage. And his name was Vat. And what he did, his sadhana, daily he would recite the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So this was his sadhana. Every day, constantly from morning till evening, he will recite the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita without fail. And in this way, by performing this sadhana daily, he became very purified. He became free from lust and greed. And then eventually, when he died, he went to Vaikuntha. But he died alone. So because he was a reclusive hermit, so there was no one, no family members or anyone who could perform last rites for him. So one day in the river Ganga, while chanting the Bhagavad Gita, he left his body. And when he left his body just remained there, and eventually it became bones. And as the Ganga changes its course, over the many hundreds of years, Ganga sometimes changes course. Slightly, the river will flow slightly in a different course. So in that way, the big Ganga became small streams. So the skeleton of this sage Vat remained in one of those streams. And it was in one of those streams, the skeleton, almost all the skeleton parts were taken away and eaten by the animals or whatever, but the skull alone remained. And it was in that skull that you were fortunate enough to die, both of you, in the form of the vulture and in the form of the parrot. You both had the great fortune to come in contact with the skull of this great purified person who had purified himself, and he had gone back to Vaikuntha. And you met your death there in that skull. So by that purification of that skull of this pure devotee, you also became purified. Completely all your sins became purified. And in this way, you have become fit to go back to Vaikuntha. So this is what Yamaraj was telling the parrot, the Aruna and the Pingala. So therefore, this is the story of Aruna, the parrot, and Pingala, the vulture, and how simply by coming into contact with a pure devotee who became purified simply by chanting the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, they were able to go back to the spiritual world, Vaikuntha. So such was the glory of the Bhagavad Gita. So Yamaraj then said, as soon as Yamaraj finished telling this story, both Pingala and Aruna, they stepped into a beautiful Vimana, a Pushpaka Vimana coming from Vaikuntha Loka, a flower aeroplane which carried both of them back to Vaikuntha. So in this way, they attained the lotus feet of Vishnu. So then Sri Vishnu says, my dear Lakshmi, anyone who hears the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, even the most sinful will attain Vaikuntha. So this is the glory of the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and we can understand several lessons from this, right? Firstly, we can understand there's one verse in Bhagavad Gita Chapter 3. It says, it is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duties perfectly. So this is an important point. So just like how the Brahmana, why did the Brahmana abandon his Brahminical action, Brahminical activities, and took up a Shudra's job? So therefore, that is a sin. So it is important that one performs one's duty. So here, the importance of performing one's duty is again stressed. That one should not whimsically abandon one's duty, even if they are not very good at it. Like, for example, somebody may become a mother or somebody may become a parent. They may not be very good at parenting, but that does not mean one should give it up, right? Suddenly, and then do something else. So because society depends on people to perform their duty properly. If they don't perform their duty properly, then there will be chaos in society. And it will lead towards other people also following in the same example and therefore abandoning their duties or performing it half-heartedly and creating all kinds of situations. So therefore, it is not recommended, and that is a sin to give up one's duty. So this is one lesson which we can understand. And then, why do people give up duty? Why do people do sinful activities? Why do people, though sometimes they know it is not right, but why do they like to do these things? So Pingala, though he was brought up as a Brahmana, but after he gave up his Brahminical duties, he mixed with the court, with the king, with the ministers, with the court people, and he became corrupted. So it's not that he did not know what is right and what is wrong, because he grew up as a Brahmana, so he had the knowledge. But due to bad association, because the power of association is so strong, it can cover a person's intelligence. So why? How does it cover? Because by the bad association, what happens is the desires in the heart become fanned. They become very strong. When we have different thoughts, we may have good thoughts, we may have bad thoughts. If we mix with bad company, then the bad thoughts become very strong and the good thoughts become very weak. So similarly, vice versa, if we mix with good association, the good thoughts become very strong, the bad thoughts become very small. So just like, once there was someone said, a man had two wolves. One is the wild wolf and one is another type of species of wolf. So the good one is a good wolf and one is a bad wolf. And then one day the good wolf and the bad wolf met each other and they started to fight. And then the question was asked, which wolf won? So the answer to that is very simple. Excuse me. The answer to that is very simple. The wolf which won the fight is the wolf which was fed. So the more the wolf was fed, one of the wolf was fed more than the other wolf. So the other wolf became stronger and was able to kill the other wolf. So therefore, if we feed the bad wolf, then the bad wolf will become very powerful. And what do we mean by feeding? So this is like the mind. The mind is where all these impressions and desires are stored. So the more we contemplate on negative thoughts, the more we surround ourselves with negative association. Association doesn't just mean people. Association also means whatever impressions we allow ourselves to digest. For example, we watch TV. So the type of things we watch, the type of music we listen to, the type of work that we do, the type of people we surround ourselves with, so the type of books that we read. So all this creates impressions in our mind. So that's the power of advertisement, you know. So modern people already understand this. So therefore they use advertisement in this way to subtly brainwash people. So in the same way, the more we associate ourselves with these things, our vasanas, the impressions and our desires which lie dormant in our heart, they become awakened and they become stronger. So they become stronger and stronger until finally it forces lust awakens in our heart. And when lust awakens in our heart, then it is very difficult to control. So lust has the power to force a person to do something even though they know they shouldn't do it. You know, when somebody is in the trap of lust, even though they know it's wrong, even though they know there's a risk, even though they know it's dangerous, but when they are in the throes of lust, then they will go ahead and do it anyway. They will take the risk. So therefore, Bhagavad Gita 3:37, Arjuna will ask Krishna, what is it that causes a person to do sinful activities as if they are driven by it? So then Krishna will say, actually there's only one answer. It is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. So this is the main cause of why we perform sins. So therefore, what must we do? We must guard against this lust. So what did this Pingala do? He did not guard against this lust. He gave up his Brahminical association. He indulged in non-Brahminical activities, which led him towards bad association, which surrounded him with bad association. And in this way, he lost his protection. So therefore, his mind became invaded with all kinds of sinful thoughts. And in this way, he started becoming more and more sinful. So we can understand this. So then Krishna in chapter 5, he says, a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, become entangled. So this is what happens when a person gives in to lust, gives in to materialistic activities. Due to lust, one performs various materialistic activities. Lust means lust for what? Lust for many things. Lust for money, lust for position, lust for fame, lust for sense gratification. So because of all this, one performs all kinds of sinful activities. And then he becomes trapped in his actions. So the law of karma traps him in all these different activities. But we saw also how Pingala was saved, how Aruna and Pingala both were saved. So that is a very amazing thing. So here there's a very beautiful verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. So it's the what do you call evidence to show how Pingala and Aruna were saved. The value of a moment's association with the devotee of the Lord cannot even be compared to the attainment of heavenly planets or liberation. And what to speak of worldly benedictions in the form of material prosperity, which are for those who are meant for death. So this verse says that material prosperity, even heavenly planets, even to attain heavenly planets and enjoy, and even liberation from matter, these things cannot compare with the value of just one moment of association with the pure devotee of the Lord. Right? You can see in the case of this Pingala and Aruna, simply by touching, coming into contact with the skull of this pure devotee, But it was not just coming into contact. They actually died with contact of this pure devotee of the Lord, even though it was just a skull. Because such a person already became so purified that it had the power, and because they died in that contact, they were able to be completely purified. So this is called Agyata Sukruti, causeless mercy of the Lord. They don't deserve it. Pingala and Aruna did not deserve it. But the Lord, in the same way, there are many, many souls in this earth or in this entire creation, in this universe, who don't deserve. We perform so many sinful activities we don't deserve. But nevertheless, the Lord is still merciful. He creates many, many opportunities. So that's why the Vedas describe that one who is born in a Hindu family, of course, the word Hindu isn't used, but the Sanatan Dharma, one who is born in a Sanatan Dharma family is very, very fortunate, because he has the chance to come in contact with a pure devotee of the Lord or with Vishnu. Whereas, those who are not in contact with, so an Indian birth, all right, or a Aryan birth is very, very fortunate, because we are in contact with the culture. So somehow, if we come in contact with the culture, we are able to come in contact with a pure devotee, because we know there are places of pilgrimage. We know Ganga. We know many, many places of pilgrimage in India. So therefore, in this way, we are able to come into contact with the Lord's names, with the Lord's pastimes, with the Lord's paraphernalia, with the Lord's devotees. So in this way, they all become touchstones for purification, simply by coming into contact. And or even better, if we are able to serve this in some way, we are very easily able to purify ourselves, right? So this is how the Lord's mercy permeates. So therefore, and what to speak of a person who takes spiritual path seriously? So therefore, chapter 5.6 Bhagavad Gita, a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without delay. So that's another lesson also we can learn from this. The sage, the skull comes from the sage, right? Vat, his name was Vat. So he was a thoughtful person who engaged in devotional service. And you can see how the Lord completely took care of him. It didn't matter that he died alone. It didn't matter that nobody came to claim his bones, his body. It didn't matter that nobody performed even funeral rites for such a person. It didn't matter that his death completely was unnoticed by anybody, but the Lord noticed it. So, and the Lord is what we want. And because he performed devotional service by reading Bhagavad Gita Chapter 5, none of these things, none of the lacking of all these other rituals mattered. He was completely protected and saved by the Lord. And not only he became purified, he went to the spiritual abode. His body became a touchstone for purification of others. And in this way, the Pingala and the Aruna were able to benefit. So this is the nature of the devotees of the Lord. A Vaishnava devotee exists simply for the pleasure of the Lord. And even when he dies, he lives forever with the Lord. So such is the power of devotional service. One doesn't have to rely on any other process. No need to bother about rituals, no need to worry about anything else if one is taking up the process of devotional service. So with that, we come to the end of this story. So let's quickly summarize chapter 5. So chapter 5, Bhagavad Gita, the story we just heard in glorification, it's entitled Karma Yoga, or action in Krishna consciousness. The Sanskrit title is Karma Sannyasa Yoga. So before we go into this summary, so we are all jivas in this creation, right? And we have become conditioned in this material nature, and we have fallen into this material creation. So there are two paths provided for the jivas. The Lord, in his scriptures, he gives us two options. Now, this is there in every scripture. You will find in Christianity, you will find in Islam, you will find everywhere, Buddhism, all over the world, people who are religious, right? They will find that there are two paths in every religion. So one path is called Pravriti Marga. Marga means path. And the other path is called Nivriti Marga. So I will talk about one first. So Pravriti Marga is the path where we try to enjoy our senses, satisfy our desires. So we jivas have desires. Okay, we have come to this material world because of karma, lust, or we have our desire to lord over matter. We want to experience this, we want to experience that, we want this, we want that. Okay, we have all these various desires, right? So Krishna says, if you want these desires, okay, I set out some rules for you to follow. You follow this cycle of sacrifice which I have set in the Vedas, and you, by following them, you will be able to enjoy to your satisfaction your desires. So that is the process of Pravriti Marga. So this is called Karma Kanda. Karma Kanda means, or the path of fruitive activities. Fruitive activities. So therefore, the Vedas, 70% of the Vedas will talk about this Pravriti Marga. You want to enjoy good wealth, fine. There are things which is laid down, how to enjoy good wealth legally. How to, if one is a Vaishya, how to perform one's duties as a Vaishya, and in this way enjoy wealth. If you want to enjoy sense gratification, okay, you want to eat, you want to enjoy all kinds of tasty food, all right, I give you, in the Vedas, various methods are given, how to cook, what kind of herbs, what things to use, right? At the same time, certain forbidden things are also told. Don't do this, don't kill, right? So you want to enjoy, okay, in this way. So like that, rules and regulations have been set. Duties, do's and don'ts have been set. And various sacrifices and rituals and samskaras have also been set. So those who are pious will follow this Pravriti Marga, and as they follow the Pravriti Marga, they will enjoy their sense gratification, they will enjoy their desires fulfillment. And not only that, because they have followed the order of the Lord, they will be elevated in their next life, and they will even attain higher births. They will go higher and higher in their births. So if one is born in a situation of a lower birth, simply by following these Pravriti Marga rules, he will attain a better birth in his next life, even to the extent that he may attain heavenly kingdoms like Indra. Right? So that is the path of Pravriti Marga. However, the path of Pravriti Marga does not give one liberation. You still have to go through the cycle of birth and death. It's just that by following the do's, one will attain higher planetary systems, a better birth, better facilities. But there is always a chance for performing sinful activity also. So one has to suffer the sins and one can enjoy the piety. So that is the path of Pravriti Marga, known as Karma Kanda, or fruitive activity. So that is life after life after life. So Krishna gives this opportunity. You want to enjoy life after life after life? Okay, this is the way. I'm setting fair rules for everybody to follow. So, and if by following this Pravriti Marga, because they come into contact, because Pravriti Marga means respecting the Brahmanas, serving the Brahmanas, serving the cows, and in this way, little by little, they will get into contact with the devotees. So there is a chance for them to come in contact with scripture, come in contact with Bhagavad Gita, come in contact with devotees. They may not be interested. They may be interested only in sense gratification. But because of the culture of Pravriti Marga, so little by little, they come in contact with such, there are opportunities to come in contact with such devotional service. So therefore, Pravriti Marga is a very gradual process. Okay, and gradually one may come to realize the nature of this world, the nature of sense gratification, how everything is actually eventually leads to only frustration. So when one comes to the consciousness that one no longer wants to go through this life after life, that the best path is for me to become liberated, to come out of this material creation, then Krishna offers the second path, Nivriti Marga. So Nivriti Marga is the opposite of Pravriti Marga. Nivriti Marga is basically, we are no longer interested in pursuing sense gratification. We are now trying to attain liberation. So that is Nivriti Marga. So this is what we call yoga, Nivriti Marga, because this alone will connect one with the Supreme, and in this way break the cycle of birth and death. Okay, so Nivriti means to renounce. So, and Krishna recommends in Bhagavad Gita 5.12, the steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace. So do we want unadulterated peace? That means perfect peace. If we want perfect peace, right, then what happens? He offers the result of all activities to me. Whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. So this is, the last part is describing Pravriti Marga. So one who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, he wants to enjoy sense gratification. He works because he wants to enjoy the fruits. So that is Pravriti Marga, and he becomes entangled. So, but whereas one who follows the Nivriti Marga, he will attain unadulterated peace. So if we have come to this level of understanding, then we will pursue this yoga. So, and then Krishna says, who are such people? Who are such people who will eventually come to the Nivriti Marga? So Krishna says in 522, an intelligent person. So it's an intelligent person who will take up this path. It says here, an intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery, which are due to contact with the material senses, which is part of the fruitive activity path. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. So Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna, don't go into the fruitive activity path, right? Better you do your duty for a higher purpose. Don't do your duty because you want to enjoy the fruits, because that will keep you entangled. Instead, do your duty, but aim for something higher. Aim for attaining the Supreme. So now in the Nivriti path, in the Nivriti Marga, right, in the path of transcendence, we call this the path of transcendence. Pravriti Marga is not transcendence. It won't bring you to transcendence. You have to come to this Nivriti, then only you transcend. Now here itself, there are two paths. So in the Nivriti Marga, there is what we call the Jnana path, or the path of light, or the path of inaction. And there is also the Bhakti path, the path of action, the Bhakti Marga. So this is, both of them are transcendental. Both of them will lead towards the Supreme. Okay. So 5:11, the yogis, so both are yogis, right? The yogis abandoning attachment act with body, mind, intelligence, and even with the senses only for the purpose of purification. So they are not interested in sense gratification. They are interested in purification so they can attain the Supreme. So now I will first talk about the jnana path. Now the jnana path is given for those who are envious of the Lord, who do not want to accept the supremacy of the Lord. So they want to escape. They are tired of sense gratification. They are tired of this material world. But at the same time, they cannot accept God as supreme. They don't want to accept somebody as somebody who is beyond them. So for such people, they rather like to, they like to use the term universe, fate, providence, or light, or Brahman. So they like to use these kind of words. They don't want to give a personality to God because they just cannot bow down to such a personality. Why should I bow down to this personality? Why should I accept him? How is it that, because for various reasons, either they are very angry with God, or they feel, for various reasons, they just cannot bring themselves to bow down or to perform bhakti towards the Lord. So for such people, what to do? It's unfortunate. So, but at least they have the desire to be free from material activity. So the Lord, even for these people, for the envious, for the asuyas, asuya means envious, even for these people, the Lord gives a path. So this is the path of jnana. So what is the path of jnana? He begins with karma yoga, performs his duty, but he does his duty for duty's sake alone. Why I am doing this? Oh, because I should do this. Why are you performing your duty so well? Yeah, I should. It is my, so it's a matter of ego for them. I should do it, right? They don't want the fruit. They don't want the result. Okay, if they don't want praise, they don't want money, they don't want all these things, but they do it because of the sense that, I should do it. So that is doing for the sake of duty. And that is jnana path, right? And it has nothing to do with God. It is something to do with their own sense of duty, right? Nothing to do with God, really. So that they perform karma yoga. And by performing karma yoga, slowly their heart melts. As they perform duty, they learn the meaning of sacrifice. So because duty cannot come without sacrifice. So slowly the culture of sacrifice is inculcated. And a culture of sacrifice is the preliminary beginning stage where knowledge can be granted. Because, there's no free lunch in this world, right? No pain, no gain. Everything we do, we have to earn it. There has to be some form of sacrifice. So therefore, by performing karma yoga in sacrifice, one becomes wiser and one is able to, jnana is able to bloom within the heart. Knowledge, they become fit candidate to receive knowledge only at that point. All right. So therefore, they progress to jnana yoga, which is described in chapter 4, Bhagavad Gita. So as they perform, and once they get knowledge, this knowledge is what? They start realizing that actually that everything is spiritual, that, I am spirit, you are spirit. So they get this kind of realization. Everything is divine. They start seeing everything in that understanding. So the moment they have that kind of understanding, then that is when they can actually give up their duty. And what do they do when they give up their duty? They go into full study of knowledge. They pursue the knowledge to the end. They study the scriptures very deeply and try to understand What is their purpose? They want to understand what is matter, what is spirit, what is the difference between matter and spirit, how can I associate with spirit rather than with matter, how can I go back, how can I be free from this material shackle. So that is the knowledge which they are trying to attain. So this knowledge is given in Buddhism. It's also there in various forms of mainly in many, all religions will have that knowledge, how to go deeper, how to seek. Even in Islam, they have the concept of jihad. What is real jihad? The real jihad is to conquer the demons in the heart, right? To conquer the heart and to introspect further and to seek God within. So in that way, that is jnana yoga, jnani. And once this jnana yoga, he gets this knowledge, he becomes in a full realized knowledge, he becomes liberated. And at that point, he seeks further. So what he does, he performs this shutting out all external sense objects, keeping the eyes and vision concentrated between two eyebrows, suspending the inward and outward breath within the nostrils. So basically, he is sitting in posture, asana, he is performing pranayama, and then he is in this way doing dhyana. So dhyana yoga. So he performs dhyana, meditation. So it's even higher than knowledge. So by performing meditation, right, this is basically he's trying to seek out that supreme within the heart. Because at jnana, at knowledge level, he understands God is everywhere. But at the higher level, he realizes God is within me also. He is in my heart, and he is in your heart. He is in every heart. So he wants to see that God. He wants to see that personality. So you can see in the beginning, he is atheistic. He doesn't want to bow down to God. But as he performs sacrifices, he gets knowledge. And with this knowledge, he starts to understand that there is a supreme Lord who has created everything. And then with this knowledge, he starts to seek out that supreme Lord independently through a mechanical process of dhyana yoga. So it's a very difficult path, right? But nevertheless, it is a path given for those who are averse to devotion. So therefore, in chapter 5, Arjuna will ask Krishna, which is better? Is it better I take this kind of sannyas jnana method where I renounce everything? Or is it better I work in yoga, in devotion? Which is better? Better I renounce all my duties, or better I work in devotion? So to that, Krishna will give his answer in verse 5.2. He will say, the personality of Godhead replied, the renunciation of work, which is the jnana path, because here in the jnana yoga path, you will renounce work and then you will pursue meditation, knowledge and meditation. So he says the renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation. So both are bona fide paths. Both paths lead to liberation. But Krishna is saying, but of the two, work in devotional service is better than renunciation of work. So clearly he's telling, better to follow bhakti path. Why? So then Krishna will go on elaborating. He'll talk a bit in chapter 5, and then he'll talk more in later chapters as well. And culminates in chapter 12. So he says, one who knows the position reached by means of analytical study, which is this jnana path, right, can also be attained by devotional service, and who therefore see both paths on the same level, see things as they are. So both are accepted. Both paths lead to the same conclusion and the same level. Merely renouncing all activities, yet not engaging in devotional service of the Lord, cannot make one happy. So what Krishna is telling Arjuna. So, the jivas, the two paths are given for them to liberate themselves. But you see, the other path, the jnana path, is a very unhappy path because they have rejected my assistance. They don't want my assistance. They don't want me to connect with them. So they want to independently search out and independently perform this meditation. And then eventually this meditation is going to lead towards me only. They will realize in the core of their heart, I only am sitting over there. So after becoming purified of all their envy, they will eventually come to realize that it is only me. But it will take a very long time for them to realize this. And the method is not easy. A lot of sacrifice is needed to do with them. Why is it difficult? Because they have rejected my assistance. So therefore, it takes harder. So therefore, right, Krishna says, but if you take the path of bhakti, all assistance is given to you. Not only that, it becomes a happy process. So he's saying, cannot make one happy if you take this jnana path. But a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without delay. Very easily they can attain. So the bhakti path is far better. Both leads to liberation, but the bhakti path is far better because it's a happy path, it's a simple path, and at the same time, it is the goal of liberation. It brings us to devotional service, which keeps us in the spiritual world eternally. It's the goal. It gives the fruit. Bhakti, the process itself gives the fruit, which is bhakti. Whereas the jnana path purifies, shows us who is God, and then brings us to bhakti only in the end. Because that bhakti is the one which will bring us out of this material creation. So better to follow the bhakti path right from the beginning if one is able to set aside one's envy towards the Lord. There are people like that. I've met many. So, but the Lord also gives opportunities at each stage. One who is performing karma yoga, he can at any time switch to bhakti. He doesn't have to move up to jnana yoga. He can straight away from karma go to bhakti. Instead of performing the duty for the sake of duty, Krishna says, why don't you do it for my sake? So perform your duty for my sake. Then it becomes bhakti. It doesn't become jnana, right? So that is how from karma one can switch to bhakti. But let's say some people are still stubborn. They want to move on to jnana yoga first. But from jnana yoga also one can switch to bhakti, because once they start studying the scriptures, once they start searching out knowledge, eventually they will come to realize that actually the goal of knowledge is to realize Vasudeva, to realize Krishna. He is the goal of knowledge. Therefore, Krishna is called Jnaya. Jnaya means the object of knowledge, the goal of knowledge. So that is so one can eventually from jnana, once he knows this, he can switch to bhakti. He doesn't have to continue with the very difficult meditation process. But still, not everyone may come in contact with such knowledge, or they may still not be purified enough to accept that. They still may have their envy within the heart. So then they may continue to dhyana. So by performing very difficult meditation, eventually it will be revealed within their heart, the Supreme Lord sitting in the core of their heart as Paramatma. And the moment they see him revealed, then all their doubts will finally cleared. And from dhyana, they will want to eventually start performing bhakti only. So they will want to serve the Supreme Lord. So that is ultimately the point. So 5:10 Krishna says, one who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results to the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action as a lotus leaf is untouched by water. So Krishna gives all help. Just like a parent sees the child trying to run towards him, and calling out, Father, 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 wouldn't the father want to give whatever help he can for the child, rather than the other child who is not calling out? He's running in the opposite direction. But here this child is running, he's stumbling, but he's running and he's calling out Father and Father. So wouldn't the father want to help? So Krishna is always partial to his devotees. So he gives all help. And one of the assistants he gives, one who takes up this path of devotional service, whatever action he performs, he is unaffected by sinful action. Just as a lotus leaf is untouched by water. He cannot be touched by sin, one who is in the path of devotional service sincerely. So Krishna protects. That's why he gives his promise. He tells Arjuna, surrender unto me. I will protect you from all sin. Do not fear. Krishna gives that assurance, right? That assurance is not there for the jnana path. So they are dependent on their own purification because they have rejected the mercy of the Lord. And the Lord, he always gives what the jiva wants. He doesn't interfere in their free will. You don't want me to interfere? Fine, I will not interfere. But still, the Lord finds ways to trick people. Anyway, so that is... So basically this chapter 5, right? It begins with the question Arjuna asks, which is better? Arjuna gives a clear answer. Devotional service is better. Take up bhakti. And then he will talk about how this bhakti can be performed. How this devotional service can be performed in bhakti path. Up to 518. And then he talks about the liberated yogi. What happens when one follows these two paths? They become liberated. So we can see this is the goal, what we will get. And he also says in the end, how this liberation can easily be attained simply by bhakti. So therefore, this is the final verse of this chapter. Bhaktaram yajna tapasham sarvaloka maheshwaram suhurdam sarvabhutanam nyatva mam shantim richati. So this is the famous peace formula. Shantim, the word shantim means peace. We all want peace. So Krishna gives the famous peace formula in Bhagavad Gita. It's a very, very famous verse appearing in chapter. It's the last chapter, it's the last verse in chapter 5. So what does it mean? Bhuktaram yajna tapasham. This is 529. So basically, who can attain peace? Nyatva mam shantim richati. One who knows me. Nyatva mam. Mam means me. One who knows me attains peace. So this is the goal, right? And knows what about Krishna? Knows that Krishna is Bhuktaram Yajna Tapasham. That Krishna is the master of all yajna, sacrifices, the recipient of all austerities. So whatever davam, austerity, tapasya one performs, whatever sacrifices, yajna one performs, ultimate beneficiary is ultimately Krishna. So that is what Bhaktaram Yajna Tapasham means. So the jnanis eventually will understand this point, and then they will surrender to the Lord. Whereas the devotees, right from the beginning, they understand this point and they perform devotional service so that eventually they can ultimately purely surrender to the Lord. What else they need to know about the Lord? Here he says, this is a translation. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, that is Bhaktaram Yajna Tapasham. And then we also need to know Krishna's position. Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. He is the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, devatas. Sarva Loka Maheshwaram, Maha Ishwaram. That means Ishvara means controller, Maha Ishvara means the greatest controller, and he is the controller of all the lokas, Sarva Loka. Loka means all planetary systems. And last one, Suhurdam Sarva Bhutanam. This is the most beautiful line. So if we see this line, we will become very, very touched. Suhurdam Sarva Bhutanam. What is Krishna here? He says, I am the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities. Suhurdam Sarva Bhutanam. For all the living entities, I am the ultimate well-wisher. Suhurdam. So if we know that Krishna actually means our best interest in heart, then it becomes easy to surrender to him. So we know his position, we know that he is the ultimate beneficiary of everything, and we also know that he is our ever well-wisher in all circumstances. And in this way, if we can only understand this and realize this one verse, then we can attain peace. Why? Because we become completely surrendered to the Lord's will. If we know that the Lord is our well-wisher, then whatever happens to us, we can understand the Lord is looking at us. He's protecting us. He's guiding our life. He's guiding our path. And we accept everything as the will of the Lord. So such a realization is the goal of bhakti. And in this way, we become peaceful. So that is, and attains peace from the pangs of material misery. Santim richati. So this is the conclusion of chapter 5. So the conclusion is, by taking up the process of bhakti yoga, one can change one's karma, activities. Both the nivritti process can change karma, but between the two, the bhakti process is far recommended by Krishna, and therefore we can easily take it up. We can attain liberation and free from reincarnation. Okay, so now it is 9:15. I will stop here. I will not have enough time to go through the 4 pillars of Dharma. I will one shot do it some other time. So now we will just end with food for the soul. So as usual, we want to feed the cage, and we want to feed the parrot within the cage. So the parrot within the cage is the soul, and the cage is the body. So we have eaten dinner, we have eaten lunch, but we need to also develop our faith and doing our sadhana. So reading Bhagavad Gita, reciting Bhagavad Gita, and chanting the names of Krishna, these are our sadhana which can purify us, and this is basically devotional service. Okay, so let us chant together. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So let us continue chanting this Hare Krishna Mahamantra every day. So I hope we are able to chant at least one round. Srila Prabhupada recommends that we should chant. A serious practitioner will eventually aim to chant 16 rounds. So one round is using the japa beat. This is you can get this beat. You can get it from our temple. You can just let me know. I can order for you and send it to you by Grab, or you can, so that's the easiest thing. So, and then you can chant with this beat. This is finishing one round is 108 names. That means 108 times you chant the mantra, you will finish one round. So it will take about 8 minutes, 7 to 8 minutes for one round. And in half an hour, we can easily do 4 rounds. So in 1 hour, we can do 8 rounds. And in 2 hours, we could do 16 rounds. So usually, but we can take it step by step. So this is how we can build our sadhana and our commitment and our sincerity towards devotional service for the Lord. Okay, so we end here. If there are any questions, we can discuss. Otherwise, any questions from anybody? Mhm. So no worries if there are no questions. If at all you have some questions later on in your mind, if it comes to you, you can always type it in the chat or put it in the WhatsApp. You can put it in the group, or you could send it to me personally. We can discuss. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me in this session of Bhagavad Gita, Gita Mahatmya. I'm very grateful for your presence. So I hope you can join me again the next week. So with that, we leave you with a happy week ahead. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Sri Krishna Bhagavan ki. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.